Have you ever watched someone tear up your identity like it was just paper? Not your attitude, not your tone, just the color of your skin, the weight of your silence, the ticket in your hand. He didn't yell, he didn't argue. But when she tore that boarding pass in half, she didn't know she was being watched. Not just by passengers, but by a system built to witness everything bias tries to hide. Tell us where you're watching from, and stay with us. Because this isn't just about a man getting denied a seat. It's about what happens when the man they try to erase is the one who designed the system that judges them. Melissa Greer didn't scan his boarding pass. She didn't check the manifest or ask his name. She simply looked at Victor Langston. Black skin, white cuffs, calm posture in a charcoal blazer. Then narrowed her eyes like he'd stepped into a place meant for someone else. "Sir, this section is for premium guests," she said, voice clipped. "Economy's at the rear." Victor didn't respond. He simply held out his boarding pass. It was paper, thick stock, printed 3 hours ago at the Sky Nova priority counter, stamped Elite 1A. Melissa didn't even read it. She reached out, took it by the edge, and tore it in half. "Try economy," she said sharply. "This isn't for you." The sound of ripping paper cracked through the cabin like a slap. Row 2 froze. A woman in 3B whispered, "Oh my God." A teenager across the aisle held her phone tighter. Victor stood still, then, without a word, bent down, picked up the 2 halves of his ticket from the floor, and took his seat. 1A, not a millimeter to the left or right. He didn't look at Melissa. He didn't look at the other passengers. He looked forward, like nothing had happened. But something had. Not just the insult, not just the silence that followed, but what was now ticking, deep inside the system. 3 rows back, someone watched. A woman with short curls and navy heels. Quiet, business casual. She tapped her phone once, then gave a nod, almost invisible, toward Victor's seat. Her name was Janine Hill, Junior Systems Tech at Langston Equity. Her mission today? Monitor Sentinel Index, a behavioral AI system designed to detect bias in real time aboard commercial aircraft. She hadn't expected her own boss to become the first case study. Melissa stood beside 1A like a gatekeeper. She tapped the recline button on Victor's seat. No response. Reached again. Nothing. Then smiled at the cabin. "Looks like seat 1A's having technical issues," she announced. "We'll get that checked after takeoff. For now, let's keep it locked. Safety first." Victor didn't move, but his right thumb pressed lightly against a matte black device resting on his thigh. One blue light blinked once, then locked solid. What just happened? Boarding pass torn by crew recline override initiated verbal tag triggered. "This isn't for you." Cabin behavior scan activated Sentinel Index. Escalation level 1. Time to evaluation, 09:56. Melissa wasn't finished. She leaned toward Kyle Benton, onboard operations lead. "He's not in the manifest," she whispered. "No 1A under that name." Kyle didn't check. He just glanced at Victor, then back at Melissa. "You want me to call security?" "Not yet," she said. "Let him sit for a minute. It won't last." Kyle said nothing, but what he didn't say mattered. 2 weeks ago, his loan request was denied by Langston Equity. The man he was watching owned the company. In row 4, a young man raised his phone. No live stream yet, just recording. His name was Aaron Sloan, 20-year-old digital creator en route to Chicago to film a docu-series on racial perception. He hadn't planned to start filming until he landed. Now his camera was locked on 1A. "Stay quiet, sir," Melissa said to Victor. "You're not on this flight's valid manifest. Either take a seat in economy or deboard." Victor finally turned. Not fast, not forceful, just deliberate. His voice was calm, calmer than hers. "You're absolutely certain about that?" Melissa folded her arms. "I am." Victor nodded once. "Then I won't say another word. Let the system handle it." Up in Langston Equity's Ethics Node HQ in Atlanta, a data stream activated. Sentinel Index scanned cabin audio, seating logs, voice modulation, posture analysis, and historical manifest edits. It cross-referenced 4 prior flagged interactions on this flight crew. 2 with disabled passengers, 1 with a South Asian man traveling with his mother, and 1 with a retired Army officer who spoke limited English. Correlated bias pattern detected. Now Level 2 escalation engaged. Time to trigger 0714. Inside the cabin, no one knew, except Janine Hill, who typed one quiet line of code into her tablet and sent it straight to Federal Reserve Oversight Node Number 3. Subject, Flight 872, Live Ethics Breach, Level 2. Escalation in progress, System Lead, V. Langston, present. Authority, Ethics Design Originator, requesting real-time logging and mirroring. Melissa circled back toward Victor's seat. Her smile was tight, her eyes colder. "I'll bring you some water," she said, "while we figure out how you got on board." She turned, walked 2 steps, poured from a bottle, and, accidentally, spilled it straight onto Victor's lap. "Oops!" Slippery tray. Victor didn't flinch. He took a napkin, dried his hands, then set the wet napkin gently on the armrest. He spoke without looking at her. "You just triggered Level 3. Melissa paused. "Excuse me?" Victor finally looked up. "Don't worry. You'll understand in about 6 minutes." In Washington, D.C., 2 terminals blinked red at the same time. Sentinel Index Level 3. Candidate for Tier 5, Investigation, Flight, Sky Nova, 872, Subject, Unprovoked Hostile Targeting, Authorized, Federal Ethics Corps. Next to the blinking text was a name. Victor Langston. System Architect Melissa Greer returned to the front of the cabin, water bottle in hand. Her face pulled into the kind of tight-lipped smile that said she was done playing nice. The fake kind. The one flight attendants use when they're about to ruin your day but still need to stay on script. Victor Langston didn't move. His slacks were damp, his patience bone dry. "Here," Melissa said sweetly, handing him another napkin. "Accidents happen." Victor looked at the napkin like it was evidence, not aid. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he glanced, just once, at the overhead camera lens tucked above the seat light panel. It blinked. Not a light, not a signal, just a reflection, barely there. But for him, it was enough. Sentinel Index, Escalation Level 3. Confirmed countdown to intervention, 0603. In row 4, Janine Hill's hands danced quietly over her tablet. She wasn't typing like someone filing a complaint. She was syncing real-time audio to the Federal Oversight Ethics Mirror. The video was already streaming. Melissa's voice, the torn ticket, the tri-economy, the spilled water. All of it was now part of a live report heading to regulators, 4 oversight committees, and, because of the Level 3 tag, directly to the office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Back in seat 1A, Victor shifted, just slightly. His posture straightened, spine tall. His left hand pressed the matte black device against his leg again. A soft click, then a humming vibration no one could hear. Melissa turned around, still playing gracious. "Are you ready to move to the back now?" she asked. "We really do need that seat for a confirmed passenger." Victor's response was calm, so calm it sounded almost detached. "If you think this seat isn't mine," he said, "I suggest you pull the manifest." Melissa bristled. "We already did." "No," Victor replied, eyes locking with hers. "You pulled a manipulated version." Her face flickered for a beat. Just a beat. She turned away. In the back galley, Kyle Benton was refreshing the manifest on his own tablet. Still no entry for 1A under Langston. But something else appeared instead. Error 428A. Unauthorized credential modification. Then another. Security lock. Sentinel sync detected. Kyle tapped again. Nothing. His device froze. Then shut down completely. Up in Atlanta, at the Langston Equity Command Node, Two analysts stood watching Victor's live footage. "He's not even talking back," one of them said. "And yet, it's all crumbling around them." "That's what happens," Janine's supervisor said. "When people think silence means weakness, they forget who built the system they're inside." I've 02. In row 3, Aaron Sloan, the young filmmaker, started whispering to his camera. "You guys aren't going to believe what's happening. This man, he's been calm the whole time. He never raised his voice, never shouted. But I swear to God, he just made 2 crew members look like they're about to lose their jobs." He zoomed in on Victor, who hadn't moved, then panned over to Melissa, now clearly flustered. Just then, the intercom crackled. A new voice. Male. Older. Tight with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rowan. We've received word from our operations desk to hold the aircraft at the gate pending a quick review. Shouldn't be long. We appreciate your patience." Victor closed his eyes. The system had spoken. 0351. Melissa walked fast to the galley, whispering to Kyle. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Kyle hissed, tapping his now dead screen. "System crash. We've lost manifest access." "Then get paper backup." "That's the thing," Kyle said, voice low. "It's not our system that crashed. It's his." Melissa blinked. "What do you mean, his?" Kyle leaned in, lowering his voice further. "That man is Victor Langston. He owns Langston Equity. He's on the Fed's ethics board. He built the damn Sentinel Index." No, that's not." "You said he was a fraud." "I said I thought he wasn't real. I didn't know he was him." Back in the cabin, Victor remained still. From the armrest, the tablet glowed again. The countdown reached 00 Yuan, and then it happened. The seatback screens, usually reserved for safety briefings and travel ads, flickered. They all turned black. Then, Sentinel Ethics Index, Active Enforcement Sky Nova Flight 872, Evaluation Complete Result, Level 5 Ethical Violation, Federal Trigger Confirmed. Every screen now displayed the same footage. Melissa tearing the ticket, Kyle confirming he's not supposed to be here. Melissa's whisper, "Try. Economy." The spilled water, the napkin. Then, white text. Authority override. V. Langston, System Architect. Action. Credit freeze initiated. 3.2b. Blocked flight activity. 73 suspended pending ethics review. Silence fell like pressure. Not embarrassment, not discomfort. Authority. Passengers stared. One man pulled off his headphones. Another woman crossed herself. Melissa backed into the galley wall, her hands shaking. "What? What is this?" Kyle was pale. "This is real." In row 2, an older white man leaned toward Victor. "Sir," he said, voice cautious. "You're the guy who built the system?" Victor turned, looked at him, nodded once. "Yes." "Then why didn't you say something?" Victor leaned back, hands folded again. "Because when justice works, it doesn't need to shout." Just then, the intercom crackled again, but it wasn't the captain. It was Federal Reserve Director Carla Nguyen, speaking live. "To all passengers aboard Sky Nova Flight 872, this is Director Nguyen with the Office of Ethics Oversight. We confirm that actions taken aboard this flight violated federal standards for equitable service. As of now, this flight is grounded. An internal review is underway. Additional agents will be meeting this aircraft upon disembarkation." Melissa dropped the water bottle. It rolled into the aisle, unnoticed. Victor stood, not to shout, not to gloat. He reached for his briefcase, clipped it shut, then turned to Melissa. "You were right about one thing," he said. "This seat wasn't just for me." He gestured to the screen, still showing her face. "It was for the system that would finally hold people like you accountable." He didn't say another word. He didn't have to. For a few seconds after the final screen flashed, no one moved. The cabin was frozen, Not by turbulence, not by fear, but by the sudden clarity of truth. Every seatback monitor now displayed a line of bold white text. Level 5 ethical violation confirmed. 3.2b credit freeze. Executed system architect Victor Langston. A woman in 3D whispered it out loud as if reading a prophecy. He built the system. A businessman in 1C rubbed his temple like the headache he'd tried to ignore had just arrived with a federal badge. A teenage girl in 5A reached for her phone with shaking hands. She didn't start recording. She started crying. Because no one expected this. Not the passengers, not the flight crew, and certainly not Melissa Greer, who now stood frozen near the galley cart, her mouth half open but no sound coming out. Victor didn't move. He remained standing, facing forward, as if letting the moment settle. He wasn't just occupying a seat now. He was occupying the air itself, every molecule heavy with justice. Passengers weren't just staring at him. They were processing him. Processing the way he hadn't yelled, hadn't cursed, hadn't even raised a brow when they tried to erase him. Instead, he let the system he built speak for him, and it did. Loud, unforgiving, documented. Across the aisle, a middle-aged woman stood slowly. "Excuse me," she said, voice cracking. I think we all owe that man an apology." Someone in 2E began clapping. Not a cheer, not a celebration, but the slow, deliberate clap of someone witnessing something historical. Others joined in, not everyone, but enough for the sound to roll softly through the cabin. Melissa flinched at the sound. Kyle Benton looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. The seatback screens changed again. Now a side-by-side split appeared. Left, live camera feed of the first-class cabin. Right, a scrolling timeline of documented violations from Skynova Airlines, each one tagged with dates, flight numbers, and incident summaries logged by Sentinel Index over the past 18 months. Flight 441, passenger profiled during reseating. Flight 992, minor passenger denied pre-board access due to skin tone. Flight 1303, disabled veteran reclassified without consent. And then 3 names appeared in bold red text. Melissa Greer, Kyle Benton, Skynova Corporate Risk Division. Someone 2 rows back muttered, "It wasn't just this flight." In the cockpit, the captain looked down at the printed report just handed to him from ground control. The header read, "Federal Ethics Intervention, Priority Override." Below it, Flight 872 grounded indefinitely, no departure authorization, cabin under active evaluation. He looked up at the co-pilot and said quietly, "This isn't an incident. This is a reckoning." Down the aisle, Aaron Sloan, the young documentarian, was now live streaming from his seat. "Y'all, I don't even know what to say right now. This isn't just a delay. This isn't about one man and one seat. This is the entire airline being evaluated in real time by a system the airline didn't even know was watching." His phone trembled slightly in his grip. He didn't speak, but the evidence screamed. At the rear of the plane, Janine Hill checked her screen again. The Sentinel Index interface showed a full upload confirmation to the Federal Reserve, the FAA, the House Committee on Transportation Ethics, and 3 major news outlets marked CNN, Reuters, and ProPublica. She exhaled, not out of stress, but out of relief. It was done. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed again. "This is Captain Rowan. We've been advised that federal ethics teams are en route to the gate. We ask that all passengers remain seated until further notice." Melissa Greer, still pale, tried to regain control. She stepped toward the front and pressed the flight attendant call system. Nothing. She pressed again. The screen above her lit up. System locked. Federal override in place. She looked to Kyle. "Do something," she hissed. "It's not our system anymore," Kyle said. "It's his." Victor turned back toward his seat, sat down gently, and reached for his napkin. He didn't speak. He simply dabbed his lap where the water had been spilled. like cleaning the last mark left behind by small people in borrowed power. Next to him, a young man leaned in. "Sir, are you going to press charges?" Victor gave the smallest shake of his head. "No." "Then, what happens next?" Victor folded the napkin in half. "They learn." Melissa made one final attempt. She grabbed the cabin PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the confusion. We are working to resolve this minor misunderstanding as quickly as—" Her voice was cut off mid-sentence. A new voice came through, automated, but chillingly clear. "This is a Sentinel enforcement notice. Passenger conduct has triggered a Level 5 breach of service ethics. Flight 872 will remain grounded until protocol completion. Unauthorized announcements are not permitted." Melissa stepped back like she'd been slapped. Passengers stared. Not in anger, in judgment. From the ceiling projector, one final video began to play. It was footage not from this flight, but from a crew-only Sky Nova training session, recently obtained and decrypted by Sentinel Index. Melissa's voice. "You can usually tell who belongs in first class before they even hand you a ticket." Off-camera laughter. Then Kyle's voice. "Yup, it's in the shoes and the skin." The laughter doubled. Back in the cabin, no one was laughing now. A woman clutched her purse tighter. A man muttered, "Jesus." Victor didn't look at the screen. He didn't need to. He'd seen this tape 2 weeks ago during internal evaluation. He let it roll today because the passengers needed to see it for themselves. Because no one believes rot exists until they smell it. The screen dimmed. Silence returned. And Victor Langston finally stood once more. He faced the cabin, his voice steady. Not loud, but heard. "You all saw what happened. Not because I shouted, not because I fought, but because I trusted the system we were told didn't exist." He paused. "Today, it showed up." Then, one by one, passengers began to clap again. Not out of politeness, not out of pity, but because they knew they had witnessed a system designed to be silent finally speak back. By the time the jet bridge door opened again, the flight had been sitting at the gate for 47 minutes. No one had moved. No one dared. The silence wasn't heavy. It was loaded. Charged. Like the cabin itself had become a sealed courtroom and the final verdict hadn't been spoken yet. Then, the moment snapped. 4 federal agents in blue blazers boarded quietly. Not TSA, not airport security, Ethics Enforcement Division, Federal Oversight, and Aviation Standards. They moved with a calm kind of authority. Not a search, not a raid, but collection. One walked directly to Melissa Greer and said, "Come with me, ma'am." Another approached Kyle Benton, who was visibly sweating through his collar. "You'll need to surrender your badge and device, sir." Kyle stammered, but complied. Passengers didn't cheer. They didn't whisper. They watched, like citizens watching the fall of a regime. Victor Langston didn't move. He remained seated, fingers laced, watching everything unfold like a man who'd been here before. Not on this plane, not in this uniformed moment, but in rooms where systems were designed to collapse and correct. One of the agents turned to him. "Mr. Langston," she said with quiet deference, "would you prefer a private exit?" Victor's answer was calm. "No, I'd prefer to walk with the people." She nodded. Nothing more. As Victor stepped into the aisle, the cabin parted. Not physically, but emotionally. Passengers leaned back. Some reached out, not to shake his hand, but to acknowledge. A man in business class whispered, "Thank you." A teenage girl mouthed the words, "I saw everything." A flight attendant from coach, one who hadn't been involved, gave him a discreet nod. She had tears in her eyes. Victor nodded back, just once, and walked off the plane. The jet bridge was lined with press already. How? Because of the live stream. Aaron Sloan's feed had gone viral during the delay, racking up 7.2 million views in 44 minutes. Sky Nova scandal was now trending across 5 countries. Victor Langston was the top search term on Google. And the Sentinel Index had just released a public statement confirming a Level 5 ethical intervention had been executed with full authorization. Outside Gate B27, the scene had shifted from quiet scandal to media circus. Dozens of cameras, live reports from CNN, MSNBC, even BBC. A rolling chyron below one feed read, "Airline grounded after Black CEO denied first-class aid." And below it, in bold, 3.2B frozen, 73 flights canceled, 4 executives suspended. Back in the airline's Manhattan headquarters, the executive floor was melting. Emails flooding in. Investors demanding emergency calls. Board members resigning mid-Zoom. The CEO of Sky Nova, Charles Renner, was on speakerphone with 2 federal liaisons and trying, unsuccessfully, to control his breath. How did we not know he was on the plane? How did your system override fail to recognize the Sentinel ping? No one answered. Because there was no defense for arrogance wrapped in automation. In the terminal, Victor walked calmly beside the agents. He wasn't flanked. He wasn't protected. He was simply visible. And in being visible, he was powerful. A reporter yelled, "Mr. Langston, do you intend to press charges against Sky Nova?" He paused. "No," he said, "because this was never about me." Another voice. "Then what was it about?" Victor turned toward the camera, his face still, his eyes direct. It was about the illusion of power, being popped like a balloon. It was about reminding the world that silence isn't the same as weakness. He continued walking. Elsewhere, reactions were erupting. Corporate ethics boards across the U.S. held emergency meetings. 3 major airlines suspended their own internal staff evaluations, fearing similar AI backlash. The FAA released a statement. The use of passive bias monitoring technology, such as the Sentinel Index, has proven essential in enforcing the dignity of all travelers. We encourage all airline partners to review their internal policies. And under that, Sky Nova's stock plummeted 38% in 2 hours. That night, news anchors debated the future of commercial air travel. CNN. This is no longer about race or class alone. This is about accountability. The Langston incident will redefine how airlines document service equity. Fox News. When AI becomes judge, jury, and executioner, are we safe or more exposed? But the real question wasn't about technology. It was about the silence that got too loud to ignore. Meanwhile, Victor sat quietly in his hotel suite overlooking the Hudson River. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't planning a press tour. He was finishing an email draft. Subject: Sentinel Phase 2 deployment. Body: expand to public transit, federal courthouses, and education systems. Ethics isn't optional. Let's make it default. He hit send, then leaned back. Across town, Melissa Greer sat alone in a white conference room. No badge, no uniform, no defense. A committee of 5 reviewers stared at her file. "Do you deny the remarks made on the training video?" She didn't speak. "Do you believe your actions aboard Flight 872 were consistent with federal ethics guidelines?" Still no answer. The chairwoman closed the file. "Your silence is noted. Your contract is not." Online, a woman named Shonda posted a video in her bathrobe. "I watched that man get treated like he didn't belong. I watched him say almost nothing. And then I watched him take down a whole system just by showing up with proof. That's the kind of justice I want to teach my kids." Her video got 1.1 million views in 6 hours. And at a small cafe in D.C., a young senator rewatched the live stream for the 4th time. He leaned to his aide and said, "Call Victor Langston. I want him leading the Ethics Advisory Board for next year's aviation reform." Somewhere, someone spilled water on a napkin again. But this time, the crew paused, checked the logs, and made sure the passenger's name matched the manifest exactly before they said another word. Because after Flight 872, the system wasn't silent anymore. 3 days after Flight 872 made headlines around the world, Victor Langston walked into a closed-door boardroom on the 47th floor of a downtown Chicago skyscraper. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a black turtleneck, dark jeans, and a leather jacket. No logo, no entourage, no press, just purpose. And seated around the long walnut table were 11 people who ran 3 of the top 5 domestic airlines in North America. One leaned back with a sharp voice. "Victor, I assume you called this meeting to negotiate a settlement?" Victor didn't sit down. "No," he said calmly. "I called it to offer you a choice." Across the room, a Skynova board member squinted. "You froze $3.2 billion in active flight infrastructure, grounded 73 flights, tanked investor confidence, and now you're here for, what, a merger?" Victor finally pulled out a chair. "I'm here to acquire." The room broke into confused murmurs. "Acquire what?" He placed a tablet on the table and tapped the screen once. A list of airline names appeared. 4 of them. Then, one by one, the logos dimmed, replaced with the words, "Provisional Ownership Transfer Initiated, Veritas Holdings." Another tap. A financial graph dropped into view. Debt positions, ethics violation penalties, federal fines pending. And under that, buyout proposal, 72% equity conversion via ethics-backed asset swap. Victor looked around. "You thought I came here for an apology. I came here for the keys." Meanwhile, back at Skynova headquarters in New York, the panic was now a slow burn. The legal team had already confirmed it. Veritas Holdings, Victor's silent umbrella firm, had spent the last 18 months acquiring minority shares, consolidating them under shell investors, and stacking voting power. The ethics freeze was just the first trigger. The real move? A hostile takeover backed by federal ethics compliance grants, public funds tied to clean tech, public trust infrastructure, and digital governance. In short, Victor had turned public shame into corporate leverage. The media hadn't caught on yet. They were still reporting the ethics fallout. But behind closed doors, real power was changing hands. And the ones who used to own the skies were now desperately trying to read the fine print on their own contracts. Back in the boardroom, someone stood up. "You're trying to control an industry, you embarrassed." Victor didn't flinch. "No, I'm trying to rebuild an industry I trusted until it embarrassed itself." He tapped again. A new slide appeared. "Introducing Langston Airframe Initiative." Underneath it, in bold, "First airline built around real-time ethics, AI-monitored service, and public reportable crew behavior. No diversity training, no empty DEI departments, just accountability, measured and made public." "You don't want me in this industry," he said, pausing. "But your shareholders do." Across the country, ordinary Americans were watching quietly, in barbershops, in classrooms, in Sunday church brunch groups. They weren't debating ethics laws. They were replaying that video from Flight 872 where a man didn't shout, didn't cuss, didn't threaten, but made the whole system blink. They didn't call him a CEO. They called him that brother who shut it all down without saying a word. Back in Chicago, one of the board members leaned forward. "You could have sued us into oblivion. Why not just let us rot?" Victor gave a faint smile. "Because collapse doesn't fix systems. It just creates space for new ones. I'm not here to destroy what you built. I'm here to upgrade it. And if you refuse, I'll outfly you. Quietly, ethically, publicly." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was realization. Later that evening, a press release quietly dropped. Veritas Holdings to absorb controlling interest in Skynova Airlines and 2 affiliated carriers. Effective immediately, operational oversight will transition under the Langston Airframe Compliance Act, an internal code developed by Victor Langston and vetted by 3 federal oversight boards. All flight crew behavior will now be monitored under Sentinel Index V2.0. Reports will be publicly visible after each flight. At CNN HQ, a producer glanced at the screen and muttered, "He didn't just cancel a flight. He rewrote the future of flying." Somewhere in Atlanta, a high school teacher rewrote her civics lesson plan to include the Langston incident as a case study in ethical accountability and systems reform. In San Francisco, an Uber driver who once worked baggage claim said out loud, "That man didn't take the fight to them. He made them hand him the building." And Victor? He didn't go on a victory tour. He sat in his quiet downtown loft in Chicago that night and watched the weather radar, not the news. He didn't care about headlines. He cared that the next black teenager who sat in first class wouldn't have to prove he belonged there, because the system would already know. Because now, he built it. It was a clear, crisp morning at LAX. Gate C18 gleamed with fresh signage, Veritas Air in bold, matte chrome. Subtle, confident, clean. Boarding had just started for Flight 001, Los Angeles to Chicago. The first official route operated under the new regime. The crowd wasn't massive, but it was historic. Journalists tried to be discreet. Travelers pretended not to stare, but they all knew what this flight was. It wasn't just the launch of a new airline. It was a symbol, a reset button for an industry that had forgotten its conscience. And at 8:21 a.m., Victor Langston stepped into the terminal. No security detail, no fanfare, just a dark tailored coat, black loafers, and the quiet presence of a man who'd once been told, "You don't belong in first class." Now, he owned the cabin. The gate agent stood as soon as she saw him. A younger black woman, maybe 30s, hair in braids, voice steady but wide-eyed. "Good morning, Mr. Langston. Welcome aboard." Victor nodded politely. "Good morning. You're doing great." She blushed, smiled, then whispered, "You don't know what this means for people like me." Victor leaned in gently. "Yes, I do." On board, the cabin smelled like lavender and cedar. Not artificial, intentional. Each seat came with a placard. "This aircraft is monitored under the Sentinel Index for your safety and dignity. Our crew is here to serve. Our system is here to ensure that's true." Flight attendants wore navy with gold trim. Nothing flashy, but sharp, professional, grounded. Not a single crew member looked anxious, because every one of them had passed the Langston Flight Ethics course, now mandatory across Veritas Air. As Victor settled into 1A, passengers boarded slowly behind him. No one bumped him. No one questioned him. No one stared too long. Instead, people smiled. A father with his daughter gave him a thumbs up. An older Latina woman touched her chest and nodded as she passed. A white businessman glanced at him, paused, and said, "They got it right this time." Victor smiled softly. "We'll see." Mid-boarding, a familiar voice echoed across the jet bridge. "Final call for Flight 001 to Chicago." The last passenger approached. It was Aaron Sloan, the same journalist who live-streamed Flight 872. He wasn't there to make noise today. No camera, just a carry-on and a quiet look of acknowledgement. As he passed Victor's seat, he paused. "I didn't come to report. I just wanted to fly this one, as a passenger." Victor extended a hand. "Glad you're here." They shook, firm, brief, real. Then Aaron slid into 2B. Once doors were closed, the lead flight attendant stepped forward. She wasn't reading from a script. She spoke with a calm that made the cabin lean in. "Welcome to Veritas Air, Flight 001. We are proud to serve you not just with comfort, but with clarity, respect, and responsibility. If at any point you feel unheard or unseen, the system hears you. If something goes wrong, the log keeps score. Thank you for being part of something new." She paused, then smiled gently. "Now let's fly." At 9:03 a.m., Flight 001 lifted off. As the clouds parted below, the in-flight monitors displayed a quiet message. "This flight is monitored for ethical compliance. All passengers are protected." The words didn't feel intrusive. They felt like peace of mind. Victor closed his eyes for a moment, not out of exhaustion, but out of release. In a small town in Georgia, a retired flight attendant watched the takeoff live on YouTube. She'd been pushed out years ago for reporting a racial incident with a passenger. Now she wiped her eyes and whispered, took long enough." In a university classroom in Toronto, a black student majoring in aerospace paused his lecture stream just to see Victor step into 1A. He screenshotted it, saved it as future blueprint. And in the FAA central office, Director Elaine Monroe watched the launch with a grin. "Tell the committee he did it. Langston didn't just reform aviation, he made justice part of boarding." Mid-flight, Victor got up, not to use the restroom. He walked the aisle, calmly, observing, listening. A crying baby in row 18, attended to immediately. A passenger with dietary needs, already noted on the manifest. A crew member smiling with genuine energy, not robotic procedure. Everything worked, because this wasn't just a flight. It was a system rebuilt with intent. Back in first class, Aaron looked up from his seat. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Victor nodded, then sat back down. "Because it is. The difference isn't tech, it's the expectation that dignity is standard, not optional." As the plane began to descend over Chicago, no one clapped. There was no need. This wasn't a celebration. It was a correction. And as wheels touched down, Victor whispered to himself, "This time, we land with all of us seen." Outside Gate 14 in Chicago Midway, a welcome banner fluttered in soft wind. "Welcome to a new way to fly." And under it, smaller text. Langston didn't just build an airline, he built a reminder. 3 weeks after the launch of Veritas Air, Victor Langston found himself sitting in a room colder than any airplane cabin he'd ever flown in. Room 312, Senate Subcommittee on Technology and Public Trust. Washington, D.C., marble floors, mahogany desks, and 6 senators sitting high behind a curved bench, flanked by aides and reporters. It wasn't the media circus from Flight 872, it was worse. This was politics. And in politics, power doesn't shout. It smiles and waits for you to misstep. Victor sat at the witness table alone. No legal team, no PR handler, just a simple nameplate. Mr. Victor Langston, founder, Sentinel Index, and Veritas Air. He adjusted his tie, folded his hands, and looked directly at the chairwoman. "Mr. Langston, this hearing is not a trial," she began. "It's a review of the use, scope, and unchecked influence of privately developed AI systems used in public transportation." Victor didn't blink. "Understood." "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." Senator Bradford, a balding man from Texas, leaned forward. "Mr. Langston, do you think it's appropriate for a single man, regardless of race, experience, or moral standing, to control a system that can ground flights, freeze capital, and override commercial networks?" Victor paused just long enough. "Senator, with all due respect, I don't control the system. The data does. What I created isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. And what airlines saw in it was their own reflection." A few camera shutters clicked. Senator Bradford smirked. A poetic answer, but not a legal one. Next came Senator Lynn from Oregon. "Mr. Langston, there's concern about surveillance. Your Sentinel Index records crew behavior, passenger interactions, ethical violations, real time. Is that not a form of corporate overreach?" Victor leaned in slightly. "The index doesn't record people. It records patterns. It doesn't know your name. It knows how often someone is ignored, dismissed, or humiliated before a complaint is filed." He paused. "If you fear the mirror, Senator, maybe it's because of what it shows." A small ripple moved through the back of the room. The next senator, Connolly, young and media savvy, adjusted his mic. "Let's be honest, Mr. Langston. You became a hero to some, a threat to others. But this isn't about what happened on Flight 872. This is about what happens next. What prevents you from freezing the wrong airline? Or punishing a crew based on biased data?" Victor finally smiled. "The same thing that prevents a pilot from crashing a plane, Senator. Design. Sentinel's thresholds are built with redundancy. Each event must pass 3 filters before action. He held up a slim folder. And unlike old systems, ours logs every decision and opens it for review. You don't trust the system? Audit it. The code's available. That line landed hard. Reporters scribbled. One aide nudged another and whispered, "Open source? He's publishing it?" The chairwoman raised her hand gently. "Mr. Langston, I've reviewed the index personally, and while I agree it's not invasive, it is disruptive. You froze $3.2 billion in infrastructure without a single court order." Victor's voice lowered, because no court had ever acknowledged bias as economic violence, until I built a system that forced their hand. I didn't act outside the law, I acted in a gap the law ignored. Silence. Across the aisle, an older black woman, Senator Davis of Georgia, leaned in. She hadn't spoken yet, but when she did, her voice cut through the tension like silk through glass. "Mr. Langston, 3 years ago, my godson was removed from a plane for fitting a description. No apology, no refund, no accountability. If your system had been in place back then, what would have happened?" Victor met her eyes. No rhetoric, no strategy. He'd still be on that plane. The room froze, not because of shock, but because everyone knew that was the entire point. The hearing broke for recess. Victor walked into the hallway, cameras flashing, reporters shouting. "Victor, are you planning to expand Sentinel into trains? Will Veritas Air acquire another airline next quarter? Are you afraid of government pushback?" He didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he took the elevator down to the parking garage where a black SUV waited. Inside, his chief of systems, Anya Navarro, sat scrolling a tablet. "How bad?" he asked. "Senate split," she replied. "But the public's with you. Polling just hit 72% approval. Even the FAA's talking about mandating Sentinel-style audits across all carriers." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Good, because they're about to need it." That night, back in his Chicago office, Victor watched the hearing replay on mute. Not for vanity, but to read the body language of every senator. He studied the eye rolls, the sideways glances, the nervous hands under the table. Then he turned the screen off and opened a folder labeled Phase 3, Cross-Agency Integration Proposal. Inside were documents on school buses, courthouse lobbies, hospital intake centers, anywhere public systems allowed silence to cover injustice. This wasn't just about airlines anymore. It never was. The next morning, the New York Times headline read, "Victor Langston's AI faces Senate scrutiny, but finds public backing." Under it, "System built for planes may soon land in classrooms, courtrooms, and city halls." In a small airport cafe in Memphis, a middle-aged woman read that headline and whispered, "About damn time someone made the system feel what we feel." Meanwhile, inside a rival airline boardroom, panic was rising. "Veritas just announced 2 new hub partnerships. That cuts our southern route coverage by 40%. We're losing pilots. They're defecting. No one wants to work without ethics shields anymore." One exec threw down his pen. "How the hell did we let a man we kicked out of first class become the standard?" The answer was simple, because they never thought he'd fight back with systems. And now he wasn't fighting. He was rewriting. Back in D.C., Senator Davis returned to her office and made a call. "Victor Langston?" "Yes, Senator. We need you on the Joint Oversight Task Force for Public Ethics Tech. You're not just a witness anymore. You're going to help us build the rules." Victor didn't hesitate. "Send the documents." That night, across millions of screens, a clip from the hearing replayed again and again. "You don't trust the system? Audit it. The code's available." In a world drowning in secrecy, corruption, and corporate PR speak, a black CEO had stood before Congress and said, "Here, look inside." And for the first time, the public believed him. The smear campaign didn't begin with facts. It started with whispers. Late-night talk shows joked about Big Brother Langston. Op-eds ran with headlines like, Ethics or tyranny when AI judges the sky? Is Langston's system too powerful to trust? Then came the viral video, a 27-second clip of a flight attendant crying, saying she'd been fired by an algorithm after a misunderstanding on a Veritas flight. No context, no full footage, just enough to go viral. By morning, Victor's inbox was on fire. His legal team, his communications director, even his own brother. "Vic, they're painting you as the villain." Victor didn't flinch. "Let them. Let's open the door wider." That same day, Veritas Air held a surprise press conference. But instead of a damage control speech, Victor did something no CEO had done before. He stepped to the podium and said, "As of today, we are releasing the full operational code and ethics framework of the Sentinel Index to the public." Gasps. All algorithms, all weightings, all logic trees. You want to know how we decide what's ethical? Read it. You want to challenge the data? Do it. You want to improve it? Collaborate. This isn't a product, it's a promise. And we'd rather be transparent and vulnerable than profitable and silent. It hit like a thunderclap. Overnight, GitHub exploded with downloads of the Sentinel source files. Data scientists, civil rights groups, even university ethics boards began reviewing it live. What they found? Not surveillance, not authoritarian controls, but a system built with safeguards, context windows, and appeal pathways. It didn't fire people. It flagged behaviors that triggered a peer-reviewed panel of human evaluators, including retired judges, former flight crew, and ethicists of color. One ethics professor tweeted, "Langston's system doesn't replace human judgment. It forces humans to justify it." But the smear machine didn't stop. Cable anchors rolled out former employees who felt watched. Think tanks wrote policy briefs warning of overcorrection inequity. A senator, not Davis, proposed the AI Restraint Act, clearly aimed at disabling Sentinel from being used beyond aviation. Victor responded by doing what terrified them most. He left the CEO seat. In a press release sent at midnight, Veritas announced, "Victor Langston will step down as CEO and transition to chair of the Open Ethics Consortium. His role will now focus on ensuring industry-wide accountability through public-private data justice collaboration." What that meant? He would no longer control Sentinel, but he would ensure no one else could either. The media scrambled. "He's bailing under pressure. Is this a PR stunt? Did the board force him out?" But those who understood smiled, because now the public owned the future. 3 days later, on a stormy Thursday in Atlanta, Victor walked into a small high school gym, not for press, but to speak with 60 seniors in a civics class who'd written him letters. He stood in front of the students, not as a mogul, not as a disruptor, just as a man who once got his ticket ripped in half because someone didn't believe he belonged. He asked one question: "What's the difference between justice and control?" Hands shot up. "Intent, consent, transparency." He nodded. Then a student in the back, a girl in a faded denim jacket, raised her voice. "When they say you're dangerous, does it ever make you feel small again?" Victor looked at her, paused, then said, "Only when I believe them. And I've learned they speak loudest when their power's not rooted in truth." The room was silent, not because they didn't understand, but because they did. Meanwhile, in Brussels, Canada, and Nairobi, governments began exploring Sentinel-style accountability in hospitals, schools, even public housing. A tech blog wrote, "The Langston method isn't about planes, it's about patterns." It asks, who do we believe and why? Back at Veritas headquarters, Victor cleared out his office. He left behind no personal portrait, no plaques. Just a note on the desk. If you have to remind people you're in charge, you're not. VL. In a final interview before his full transition, a journalist asked, "Do you regret starting with airlines? It's such a brutal, messy industry." Victor chuckled. "That's exactly why I started there. Because how a person is treated at 30,000 feet, when they're most vulnerable, is how systems reveal themselves. I didn't build Sentinel to punish bad actors. I built it to stop good systems from silently turning bad, and to give ordinary people the log file. As the camera faded to black, viewers across America paused. Not because of the man, but because of the idea. A system that doesn't shout back. It just logs the truth. And sometimes, that's all people need to feel seen. It was supposed to be a quiet Friday. Victor Langston had planned to spend the day reviewing white papers for an ethics pilot in public school grading systems. He'd even made tea, black Assam, no sugar. But at 9:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. A name appeared on the screen he hadn't seen in years. R. Thomas, FRA Command, the Federal Railway Administration. Victor stared at the name for a second. Then he answered. Langston. Victor, I know you stepped back, but we've got a situation. Go on. 10 minutes later, he was watching shaky cell phone footage from Chicago's Union Station. A woman in a wheelchair had been forcibly removed from a business-class rail car by two conductors. The reason? She had a valid, accessible pass, but her skin was black, her coat was frayed, and she didn't look like she belonged. Passengers had filmed everything. The woman didn't scream. She just repeated, "My pass is valid. You can scan it again." She was ignored, pushed off, left crying beside the tracks. The footage had gone viral. But that wasn't the crisis. The crisis was what happened next. 3 FRA workers had come forward saying this wasn't isolated. The pattern stretched across multiple cities: Cleveland, St. Louis, Philadelphia. And now, the FRA needed a system, one they didn't trust themselves to design. Victor didn't hesitate. "I'm not taking control again," he said flatly. "We don't want control," Thomas replied. "We want clarity. We want to know what our own systems won't admit." Victor leaned back. "Then you'll need someone who's lived on both sides of it." "Who?" Thomas asked. "Her name's Melissa Greer." Yes, that Melissa. The flight attendant from Flight 872. The one who tore his ticket, who lost her job, who, in the years since, had quietly rebuilt her life, attended ethics training, worked in disability support at a local hospital, and most importantly, never stopped reaching out. She had written to Victor 3 times. He never responded. Not until now. 2 days later, in a sunlit cafe in Baltimore, Melissa looked up as Victor approached. She stood, unsure if she should shake his hand. He offered it first. "Melissa, Mr. Langston." "Victor." They sat. Melissa spoke first. "I didn't expect this." "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to ask if you'd help build something better." She blinked. "You want me to help design a system?" Victor nodded. "You've seen the worst of it from both sides. You acted out of bias, but then you chose to confront it. That's what most people never do." Melissa swallowed hard. "I thought I'd be the last person you'd ever call." "You were, until now." 3 weeks later, inside a repurposed rail terminal in Philadelphia, the FRA hosted the first public transit ethics design workshop. Melissa stood at the front. Behind her, a live Sentinel prototype interface, modified for trains and stations. She introduced a new tool, Pause Point, a trigger mechanism that would flag any forced ejection or denied boarding of a passenger with mobility needs, language barriers, or systemic risk indicators. The system wouldn't block action, but it would log the moment, the justification, and trigger peer review within 12 hours. And every log would be sent to an independent civilian panel. Victor watched from the back row. He wasn't the face of the rollout. Melissa was. And when a reporter asked, "What qualifies you for this?" she didn't flinch. "Because I failed someone who had every right to be where he was. And now I help make sure others aren't failed in silence." The pilot began in 3 cities. In 6 weeks, it had logged 412 incidents. 72 were escalated. 19 resulted in formal action, not to punish, but to acknowledge. And for once, The system didn't wait until someone screamed. Victor returned to Chicago. He didn't hold press conferences. He didn't sit on any board. But he kept reading the logs. One night he saw a flag from Omaha. A conductor had stopped a colleague from removing a passenger in a worn jacket who didn't speak English. The system had paused the action for review, and in that pause, humanity happened. No removal, no conflict, just a moment of clarity. Victor smiled. That's the update. The next day, he received a handwritten note. Thank you for believing I could become more than my worst moment, MG. He folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer, then closed his laptop. He'd done what few systems ever managed. He made the system learn. He made people change, and he did it without shouting. Tell us where you're watching from, and have you ever seen a system finally do the right thing before someone had to beg for it? It was a quiet September morning in Washington, D.C. The kind of crisp fall day that made the city feel more like a museum than a machine. Inside the Library of Congress, the Great Hall buzzed quietly, not with tourists, but with thinkers. Leaders from every sector, transportation, tech, law, education, had gathered for the first ever Human Systems Symposium. The theme, Dignity as Data. And the keynote? Wasn't a politician, wasn't a billionaire, wasn't a brand. It was a name few expected to hear again. Victor Langston. He walked in slowly, with no entourage, no teleprompter, no prepared slides, just a single image projected behind him. A first-class airplane seat. Seat 1A. Empty, no label, no airline. Just the absence of a body. Victor stood at the podium. He paused. Let the silence sit long enough for people to lean forward. Then, finally, that's the seat I was denied. And I'm glad I didn't sit in it that day. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Victor continued, because if I had, I might have stayed quiet. I might have believed the seat was the reward. But that seat wasn't the prize. The system that denied it, that was the lesson. He stepped aside, letting the image linger behind him. What you see isn't a chair. It's a checkpoint. It asks who belongs, who decides, and what happens when the answer isn't just wrong. It's systemic. Victor didn't use stats or charts. He told stories. He spoke of Elias Carter, the homeless veteran who stood in court and made the room rise. Of Maya Daniels, the linguist who turned bias into blacklists. Of Melissa Greer, who went from bias to bravery and became a voice for accessible transit reform. He paused at each name. Let the stories breathe. These weren't heroes because they fought loud. They were heroes because they refused to let silence become policy. He turned to the image again. When I first built Sentinel, I thought I was building a watchdog. But the longer I watched the logs, I realized something. We weren't building tech to watch people. We were building mirrors to make the system look at itself. Because systems don't change when you yell at them. They change when you show them what they've become. A hand went up from the audience. Unplanned. Victor paused. A middle-aged white man in a transit uniform stood and asked, "What do we do when the system pushes back?" Victor smiled, nodded. Then you keep a record. You make the data undeniable. And you make it public. He paused. Because when people see themselves being ignored, again and again, they stop believing in fairness. But when people see the logs, the trends, the truths, they start asking better questions. And better questions lead to better systems. He ended his talk without applause. Just a simple closing line. There are still 1,000 seats left empty, and they're waiting for us to fill them, with accountability, not assumption. He stepped off stage to silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel cold. It felt reverent. Later that night, someone posted the photo of the empty seat from his keynote. The caption read, "He didn't reclaim the seat. He redefined it." The clip went viral, not in the usual way. No outrage, no flashy title. Just people quietly sharing it with comments like, This made me think about how I treat people I don't recognize. I've seen this happen to my dad. We need more of this energy in government, schools, everywhere. At the FRA, Melissa stood beside a new dashboard in the ethics control room. On the screen were 10,432 reports across all pilot systems, each marked resolved, pending, or escalated. Underneath, a live transparency feed that let any civilian see the status of every flagged case. A junior tech asked her, "So, do we wait for Victor to weigh in on this next one?" She smiled. Victor taught us how to ask, not to ask him. Meanwhile, across the world. In a small airport in Lisbon, a young gate agent printed out a memo from the Veritas Ethics Charter and taped it to her break room wall. In Nairobi, a school principal adapted the Sentinel logic tree to track teacher-student interactions for equity. In Sao Paulo, a municipal bus driver filed a formal refusal to remove a low-income student without a pass because the system flagged it for pause, and he agreed. Victor, he didn't return to headlines. He moved quietly between cities, offering counsel to emerging leaders. He never wrote a memoir, never accepted an award. He just kept showing up, whenever a system was ready to stop pretending and start listening. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the Veritas relaunch, a final message appeared on the company site. The future isn't tech, it's trust, VL. Below it, a footnote. Logs remain open. We still watch ourselves. And somewhere high above the clouds, on Flight 723 to Seattle, a child asked her mother, "Mom, why does that sign say, 'Dignity is logged here'?" Her mother smiled. "Because one time someone got denied a seat." And instead of getting angry, he built something better for everyone. 1 year after that infamous day on Flight 872, a new kind of ceremony was held in Atlanta. Not on a stage, not with fanfare, but at Gate C12 of Monroe International Airport. It was the site of something different, a new kind of boarding ritual. A moment of silence. Then, a soft chime rang across the speakers, followed by a voice. "Before boarding begins, we honor all those who were told they didn't belong, yet stayed standing in truth. This seat, Seat 1A, will remain empty in their honor, and in reminder." Passengers stood still. Some looked confused. Some moved to tears. But all of them watched as flight attendants placed a simple gold plaque on Seat 1A before the first passenger boarded. It read, "Reserved for dignity, because one person made us all better." Victor Langston wasn't in the terminal that day. He was watching the stream on his phone, sitting on a bench by Lake Michigan. He didn't say anything, just looked out at the water, then quietly smiled. Across social media, the movement began. People started tagging empty seats they saw on buses, trains, subways, calling them Victor seats. Not for celebrity, not for fame, but for systems that now pause before denying dignity. At Harvard, a systems engineering class used the Langston Protocol as a model for real-time ethics monitoring. At Morehouse College, a professor added his story to the freshman orientation course on leadership and legacy. At airports around the world, the message spread. No slogans, no campaigns, just signs that read, "Respect is scanned before your boarding pass." Melissa Greer now led the Ethics Integration Unit at the Department of Transportation. She stood before Congress with tears in her eyes as she explained what the first pause point taught her. That technology doesn't give people humanity. It just stops systems from taking it away. In Nairobi, Sao Paulo, Toronto, even Tokyo, stations began implementing versions of Sentinel Public for transit. It became not just a tool, it became a culture. A quiet question built into every gate, every scanner, every seat. Are we seeing the person or the pattern? And in Chicago, Victor received a letter from a school teacher. It was written in pencil on wide-lined paper by a 5th grader named Michaela. It read, "Dear Mr. Langston, I saw your story. My brother got kicked off a train once because his shoes were dirty. He cried. But now we see signs that say everyone is welcome. I hope one day I can build something that makes people kinder like you did. Thank you for making the seat matter." Victor read the letter 3 times, then folded it neatly and slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. That same jacket he'd worn on Flight 872. Now, slightly faded, but still whole, just like him. He stood and looked toward the horizon, not to claim credit, not to stay in the spotlight, but to keep walking forward, quietly, consistently, purposefully. Because real justice doesn't announce itself. It simply leaves a seat open for others. It had been almost 2 years since the flight. Since that moment in Gate B7 when Victor Langston stood still, holding a valid first-class ticket, and was told, "You don't belong here." Since that ticket was torn, since that moment reshaped an entire industry. And yet, Victor Langston was nowhere to be found. No interviews, no public posts, no speaking tours. Just gone. Rumors circled. Some said he'd moved to the Pacific Northwest and lived off-grid. Others claimed he'd quietly joined the UN's Ethics Council under a different name. But no one knew for sure, until one day, a new name appeared on a research paper published through the Global Equity Index Initiative. Author, E.L. Gray. Topic, Behavioral Pause Thresholds in AI-Driven Systems. Tone, unmistakably, Victor. Melissa Greer read the paper 3 times, then sent it to Maya Daniels, now leading the Global Linguistic Equity Council. Maya forwarded it to Elias Carter, the now-housed veteran who ran a nonprofit teaching tech literacy to low-income vets. They all recognized the voice, the phrasing, the signature restraint. "It's him," Maya whispered on a Zoom call. "He's still out there, just not with his name." "He's past the seat," Melissa added. "Now he's watching the system from outside it." That same month, at the International Ethics and Systems Forum in Brussels, a young black engineer took the stage. Her name was Jenna Okoye, 28 years old. She was presenting a framework called Clear Glass, a transparency overlay for algorithms used in public resource allocation, housing, healthcare, education. At the end of her talk, she paused, then said, "I built this after reading a paper by someone named E.L. Gray. But I don't care who he really is. All I know is, someone once refused to sit down. So I could stand here now." The room gave her a standing ovation, not because she claimed victory, but because she made space for continuation. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., at a quiet suburban library in Minneapolis, an older man returned a stack of overdue books. He apologized softly to the librarian, wore an old, worn jacket, black denim, no logos, just a folded slip of paper sticking from the breast pocket. The name on the library card? Eli Gray. He checked out 2 more books. Designing for the Invisible, Silence as Signal, Ethics in Automation. Then left. He didn't take a rideshare, didn't call anyone, just walked 3 blocks to a modest 1-bedroom apartment and began reading. That night his phone vibrated once. A single encrypted message appeared. "Clear Glass deployed in 41 cities. Pause point now mandatory in all U.S. transit systems. Sentinel logs requested by EU regulators. The seat is no longer empty. It's everywhere." Victor smiled, then deleted the message. The next morning, in a downtown school in Memphis, a 4th grader tapped on her teacher's desk. "Miss Taylor, why does the sign by the classroom door say, 'The system still sees you'?" The teacher knelt to her level. "Because a long time ago, someone got left out." And instead of shouting, he built a mirror. Across the globe, the impact grew quietly. In Bogota, buses delayed boarding by 5 seconds to allow the system to scan for accessible needs. In Seoul, an adapted Sentinel system flagged algorithmic bias in high school grading. In Oslo, parole boards used pause point-inspired tools to prevent racial skew in recidivism scoring. And in each system, in small, almost hidden type. One phrase repeated. This log exists because someone chose not to look away. One day, a tech journalist tracked down the original Sentinel server logs. They found the very first entry. Case ID 000. Entry notes. Passenger denied first-class boarding. Ticket verified valid. Staff flagged for behavior escalation. Automatic ethics trigger activated. A subnote. Never publi in Bogota. Buses delayed boarding by 5 seconds to allow the system to scan for accessible needs. Shed. No audio, no confrontation, just a pause and a decision to not let it go unseen. The journalist wept while reading it, then closed the tab. Back in Minneapolis, Victor Langston sat on his porch, sipping tea. He didn't watch the news anymore. He didn't track metrics. He trusted the system to watch itself now, because he'd built it not to remember his name, but to remember what happened. And so, for all the empty seats, for all the passengers told they weren't enough, for every child growing up wondering if they'll ever be truly seen, there is now a system that doesn't ask if they belong. It simply logs what others try to erase. Victor Langston never reclaimed seat 1A. He didn't need to. He made sure the seat could never be denied again. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever chosen silence not as weakness, but as a seed for something greater.